Okay, guys, so listen, I have a teleprompter in front of me, so I'm gonna read off of it. And this video is kind of like, I've been thinking about this for a while now, right? So I'm just trying to get my thoughts together on why I think the comic book industry is where it is, and in my opinion. So, please, if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and please check out my other videos. And I will get back to the how to create a universe. I'm working on those. It takes time. I'm in between some stuff, so I'll gladly get back to that. I really wanted to. I have some stuff coming up, so stay tuned for those things with those comic book superheroes. But let's get into this video now. Look, comic books have been a cornerstone, right, of pop culture for decades, right? They've given us iconic heroes, unforgettable stories, and a community of passionate fans. But as the industry has evolved, so have the challenges, right? And the challenges it faces. Today, we're diving into three key issues that I think are shaping the world of comics, right? And have been for the past 20 years or so. And what they mean for fans, creators, and the future of the medium. So we're gonna dive into that. And again, everything here is just my opinion, guys. What I feel, and from being a comic book fan for a very long time. So I just hope that I can leave you with something to think about in this video. So let's start with the comic book shop, right? So the comic book shop experience in general, for many of these stores, are a haven, right? For us, a place to geek out, right? Like meet like-minded people, fans, and dive into the latest issues, right? But I think there's a problem, right? There's a problem. Many comic shops feel like more like hobby meetups than they are actual retail stores, right? For casuals, fans, and first timers, right, walking into a shop like that can be intimidating, right? The inside jokes, like the deep cut references, the clicky vibe that's in there, it can create like a sense of separation, right? And not inclusion. And if the industry wants to grow, in my opinion, it needs to make these spaces more welcoming, right? After all, every lifelong fan, right, was once a newcomer. Shops would focus on bridging the gap, right? Bridging that gap between a hardcore collector and casual readers, right? Folks that just want to find out more about superheroes and comic books in general and stories, right? Creating an environment where everyone feels like they belong, and that's very important in my opinion. Now, that's the first point. And a second point for me as an artist. Now, listen, guys, I'm going to tell you some things here. As an artist, I'm not telling you I'm better than these guys. I'm nowhere near better than the guys I'm about to mention and what I'm about to say about these artists and what do I think and why things are the way they are. I wish I was in a position, right? But I'm not, right? But I don't have to be a basketball player or pro basketball player or even amateur basketball player to tell you that one basketball player is better than the other, right? Or that one player has ruined it for the league. Having that opinion, right? I have eyes, I can see, I can tell, right? I can tell that things, who's better, who's worse, or what's good and what's not, just by looking. I don't have to actually be an expert in the field by participating in the field per se. So now let's talk about the art. Now having said all that, over the last 20 years, comic book art has shifted, right? And correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, let's have this conversation to a more minimalist approach, right? Well, there are still standout artists, in the last 20, 25 years, like, the Dan Morris, Jorge Jimenez, Bruno Redondo, Daniel Sampere, Simone Di Meo, Lucas Meyer, and Leonardo Romero. Much of the work, and even these guys, right, as a whole, feels interchangeable. Now, there are differences. I'm not going to say that, oh, guy, you can't say, no, I'm not. Listen, obviously, there are differences. But these artists, bring incredible skill and creativity, but the industry overall trend leans toward a more homogenized style, right? And it feels like the colorists are doing a lot of heavy lifting, which I'm more for the colorists getting paid and getting recognition, because they do a great job. But compare that to the 80s and 90s, right, where artists had unmistakable styles. Like, you could tell a Rob Liefeld cover from an Eric Larson cover or a Jim Lee cover, masterpiece from, like Todd McFarlane, like Web Slinging Spider-Man, right? Artists like Sam Keith and Stephen Platt, Splat for short, right? Remember that? Oh, guys my age, right? They brought such a unique flair to their work that you knew who drew that book just by glancing at the cover. Like, you could just look. You didn't have to wonder, oh, let me see who that looks like. So no, you knew. And if you saw a copycat or somebody that was influenced by one of those artists, you go, that kind of looks like, but you knew it wasn't, but you're trying to figure out why it looks that way. It happened with Platt early on in his career, right? You're like, was that a McFarlane cover? Like, what is that? But eventually he worked into his own kind of unique style. You know, the individualism that made comics feel alive, like each book was a unique piece of art, right? Today, while the storytelling has evolved, the art often lacks the same punch. It's not about going backwards, it's about encouraging artists to push boundaries, right? And reclaim that sense of individuality, right? Where the stories are evolving and we're getting a lot of great stories. And some people would argue no, but I would say yes for the most part, especially in the indie section of things, right? They're pushing that envelope in story-wise. But even in the indies, you can see a lot of just minimalistic artwork. Like it just, and a lot of guys can just interchange. Now, what I like a lot of these modern guys that I just mentioned at the top of this part of the point making here, it could use some punch. People wonder, they call Rob Liefeld the worst artist that ever have lived, but every time he puts a pencil to pen to paper to a cover, it takes the book from a 10,000 a month, if that book, that particular issue will sell 60,000, 70,000, 80,000 copies. Why? Right? Just ask yourself why. You know, you don't have to, it just, why is that? It's because it's so different and it captures a moment like of, oh, that is a comic book. You see it. There's no hybridization of a manga in between, which I love manga. I'm greatly influenced by it, but you can see the differences, right? But now let's move on to point number 3, and I think this is the biggest point of it all, right? And I'm going to unite these points together, right? So the elephant in the room is the variant covers, guys. Listen, it's variant covers, grading, and the rise of secondary market, right? Variant covers were meant to be special, like a way to celebrate iconic moments or artists, right? But over time, they've become a double-edged sword, right? To get those 1 in 50 and 1 in 100 variant, shops have to order hundreds of copies of an issue. And when those extras don't sell, they pile up unsold, unsold and unloved, right? They just sit there. So what does that cause? Well, that causes shops to order more books that are not going to sell. You're going to sit on shelves and in boxes, go to the 50-cent bin, but they're still going to owe that bill, right? So you are asking the comic book shop to go more in debt for special covers. So they got to order 1,000 books to get 2 books at times of 1 in 500, right? So 2 books, and they're going to order 1,000. And by nature now, so the way it's priced is if a book is $5, they pay $2.50 the shop. So at $500, now the price of the book is $500, right? The price of that book has risen by as much as what they paid to get the lot in. And all they're doing it, if they sell that book, they break even on that one, right? Okay, they broke even, they make any money. So then now they're looking, what else can they make money on? And when you're doing this, forever, it's like, guys, that's a lot, that's a lot. So, I'm gonna bring up here real quick on the computer. Give me a second here. About the top 10 most varianted. I don't know if that's a real word, but we're gonna go with it, right? Comic books of all time. You're gonna be surprised about who they are. Hold on 1 second. Let's go here. And I'm bringing this up now. Listen, you're gonna be surprised because I myself, when I went down this rabbit hole, I didn't know how many variant covers there were. So we're gonna go top 10. Number 10, I have made a post about it. Detective Comics number 1000 had 86 variants. If you would have told me that was number 1, I'm like, wow, that's a lot. Dang, that's a lot. Like, that's number 10. Right there, you gotta understand, right? So they had, it was the 54 variant covers and then six variant covers. It was a bunch. It was just a lot of variant covers. So number 9 it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin had 87. They beat it by 1. 87 variants, guys, right? 87. And how many of those variants are worth anything? Because cover A is worth a lot of coin. So what is the variants going for, right? Okay. Vampirella number 1, 90 variants. That's the Dynamite re-release, right? 90. Guys, Godzilla, Kingdom of Monsters 2011, number 1, 104. 104. Number 6, Batman, number 50, 2016, 106 variants. 106. Then you have Thundercats recently in 2024, number 1, 107 variants. 107. Okay, wild. Number 4 was Dark Knight 3, The Master Race 2016, 109 variants. 109. They even had a 1 in 5,000 art by Jim Lee. Yeah. Wow. 1 in 5. You had to order 5,000 copies to get that one. How much you think that copy is going for? Right? I didn't even look it up. Look it up. Let me know. Amazing Spider-Man number 666, 145. 145 variants. Number 2, going back to the TMNT 2024 number 1, which I have, 204 variants. 204 variants. 204. Okay, 204. And the number 1, which surprised me, in 2003, The Walking Dead number 1, 253 variants. 253. Obviously, it was reprinted in 2010 and then reissued and given out to new carrying covers. What pushed it over the top? 157 store variants. Store variants. So you have that, and then you have the grading system. So now you have variants, and you're only collecting for either variants, rarity of variants, 9/8s, 9/9s, 10s, keys. No longer are people really collecting for the stories, as much. Nobody's really caring about the artist and really the artistry of it. And that's what made it popular, because Youngblood number 1 for Image sold 1 million copies with one cover. One cover. Tom McFarlane Spawn, one cover. Wildcats, one cover. Brigade, one cover. And Brigade wasn't even drawn all that great. One cover. Jim Valentino, not necessarily known for like a blockbuster artist. One cover. Now the cover was gimmicky for Shadowhawk, I get it, but it was a great gimmick. One cover. You can just go back to being one cover. When you would get a reprint, it'll be like a gold or platinum, or something. Now you have and I'm not saying don't do variants. Variants are important. But when you take in the fact that the secondary market is beating out the direct market, right? The new releases. More money is being made for old back issues. People only caring about keys. They don't care about a run. They don't care about, is the number 1 a key? Is that number 1 a key? Is it introducing anybody new? Or is that, no? How about number 5? How about, they skip over the run. They don't care. The grading companies, they don't care. They don't release how they actually grade things. People have sent in the book to get graded. It'll be a 9.6. They'll open up that book, crack open the case, resend that book, and get a 9.8. There's been plenty of controversies with CGC, allegedly, right? For fraud. You can look those up. Recently, the Stan Lee signature, the smudge signature gate, right? Allegedly, there's something probably going on there. But it's that's why I still love my Marvel and DC in short, little narrow gaps. And for me, it's the indies. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing with my no comic book universe. Maybe one day something happens, right, where I can pay somebody to do a book, right, based on my characters. But for now, it is what it is. But I love the indies because it's just, fun things are happening there. But even those are getting, scavenged by the key collectors. And because if a show gets picked up or a comic book gets picked up for a show, rumors, this, that, and the other, it's wild, man. And before it was just the artists and the writers would drive the market. Rob, Jim, Valentino, Wills, all of them going over the Image and do what? 1 million copies sold guaranteed. Not because it was a rarity, because Youngblood number 1, it was $1 up to 2 days ago. Roughly, right? These books weren't a lot of money. Even up until recently, they weren't a lot of money. There was no value in them. And now they're starting to get a little value. But people didn't buy them because there were keys of this and that and the other. And to think about it like this, when I was young, and Fantastic Four was a 30-year-ago book, it was in the thousands and thousands of dollars. Youngblood number 1, Spawn number 1 are 30 years ago to me now. So it's the same difference, right? Like when Rob was a kid and Fantastic Four came out and he was 30, you know what I'm saying? And they're not worth much, but they sold then because everybody was excited about it. everybody was excited, but nobody's excited about the stories or the books or the artists. They're more excited about, is it gonna get picked up? Is it gonna be, keys in there? Is Marvel movies, Marvel Studios and DC Studio picking up to make a movie or a show? That's what they care about, and I think that's what is killing the comic book industry, and that's why manga is beating the crap out of us, because they make the stories that people want to read. The artists drive the stories, they're creators, and only if that's good enough do they get picked up for a for a movie, for a show, for a series. And they don't have 1,000 variant covers to their mangas. It's just here's volume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Enjoy, and it is what it is. But that's my take. Again, for the artists, I'm not better than these artists. I'm not claiming to be. I'm just saying that this is what I saw with the artistry. And Rob Liefeld had made a comment a long time ago before. There's no more rendering in comics. It's just the artist doing heavy lifting, which is ironic because now he does less rendering himself, and his colorist, which is a great colorist, does a lot of heavy lifting for him. But he has an excuse. He's an older guy now, so his eyes are hurting. Mine's are getting there, so I understand. And so are my hands. But yeah. So guys, let me know in the comments down below. How do you feel? What do you think is really killing this comic book industry? And is the direct to consumer, creator to consumer, the way to go in the future? Let me know in the comments down below. Guys, thank you for staying with me, and I'll see you in the next video. And I'm out. Peace.